Good day everyone, and welcome to another tutorial in the 4Anime series. Today we will be talking about those sun rays that come through the water. So let's get into it. So of course we're going to need a water surface. Doesn't need to be too big because this is just illustrating the technique. Let's make sure we're actually looking up at it. It's one of the easiest ways to actually get it to look right. I want it to look almost all the way up. Something like that. Okay. Let's see what we got. Okay, it's nice and square. We can deal with that. Okay, so let's make it look like water and call it water. Water surface. And we're going to give it a material, water, and make it look like water. Do realize that this is a Blender render tutorial for this, but because most of this is compositing related, you can do this in pretty much any render engine. Just apply the same principles. It's really not that complicated. Okay, that's good. Now let's give it a surface, change, clouds. And let's make it 0.5. We have to just use alpha and normals. I think that should do. Now let's just get an object in here. Let's use a monkey. I think a monkey will do great as an example. Smooth, Control 2. And let's give it a color. Give it a toon material. Okay, make it like a yellow. And let's also add a pillar type situation in here. Turn it, make it 45 degrees, okay? Apply it and then array it. Don't know why specifically I'm doing this, but you know what? The Lord leads us in unique ways. So yeah, just gonna go for that. Okay, let's add a sun lamp in here as well, just so they actually respond to light. That's nice. Making sure it runs with shadows and fast enough. And I think that should be good. Let's just remove the ambient occlusion stuff because that makes it rather slow in rendering. And I think that should be good. We do need to change the sky color though. So let's make it a nice strong blue. Something like that. Okay. See if we can actually see. See, we can't see the monkey. Okay, we have to make it nice and big, and we have to extend our camera reach. Okay, I'm gonna go for about 30. Remember, this does mean that we have to adjust our mist distance, so I'm also going to change that to 30. Even if it's not enabled, we're going to be using a pass later to create that fade to blue effect that we have underwater. That looks really cool. We just need to turn off freestyle, of course. And I want to move her a little bit up. And now we can actually deal with the render layers. So this is like a default render layer, nothing fancy about it. Let's call it scene. And let's make it the first layer, moving everything except the camera to said first layer. And on the second layer, we're going to be adding what is known as our ray image. So let's get that. To get that, sorry, you have to duplicate this water surface right here. I'm just going to make it a little bit blue. And take it down just a smidge so that Blender can differentiate between the two. And give it a new material. Call it water rays. Call this one rays if you want to. You can call it something else. It's really up to you. It's not going to receive or cast any shadows, and it has to be shadeless. The reason it has to be shadeless is because if something passes over it or something like that, we don't want it to be influenced because the light is anyway coming from the top. Additionally, we also want it to be clear, so that the rays only cut off when something actually moves through the plane. If you want to, you can go the extra mile and use translucency and all that kind of stuff to, make the rays respond even more to what's outside of the water. In this instance, I just want to illustrate how to get that look, so that's why I'm doing it as quick as possible. Tutorials, it's always a thing of trying to figure out where is the balance between creating a stunning result and getting the subject matter covered. Okay, I'm going to leave the normals on because they have to affect a second texture. Okay, so let's just finish the water surface first. I'm going to call this roughness. And I'm going to add an empty. The empty is going to be creating our animation for the water. So I'm just going to move it. Not too much. It has to move, but it has to move slow enough. We're not going for rapids here. We're just going for something beautiful. So I am going to make it slower at the end, most likely. So let's see how fast it's going. I think that'll do, actually. It might be a little fast, but I think we're fine. So let's assign this texture to move along it. Let's change its name to Empty River. And get that Empty River. And it should... Okay, no, it didn't. I was hoping with the other plane it already transferred it. No, it did not. So select that. And now we're going to add the second texture. Now the second texture is that kind of a foam web that we usually see, especially in aquarium type scenes. It's not always to show real foam. Most of the time, it's just to show you this is the water surface. So that's why I'm adding it. Bottom one has to be the crackle, so that the crackle gets distorted. Don't want it to be too distorted, but I also don't want it to be not distorted. So I'm going for about 0.53. No, 0.53 is a little bit much. Let's just go 0.5. Make it constant and flip it so that the foam lines are white instead of black. I'm trying to make it thin. That's good. And of course we want this to be emitted. So go object. We have to move it as well. Let's make it 0.52. I have to emit, and the color has to be added. Let's see what it does. Absolutely nothing. I wonder why. I think it's because I'm on the bottom plane. Let's see. No, I am on the surface. That's weird. Let's just turn the rays off for a second. I think that's partly the problem. Yep, that was the problem. Okay. So let's just reduce the wobbles just a little bit more. Yeah, I think 0.4 will do. 0.4 is nice. The normals also mess with the texture, so that's probably the reason. Okay, I'm happy with that. We just need to change the secondary color here. This black, make it like a greenish blue. Okay, that's fine. Roughness here, have to give it a ramp. Just want to see, it is alpha, yes, okay. See that. Absolutely stunning. Okay, next step. Now we need to apply this exact same texture to our water surface. The rays. Sorry. So go in there to the textures, and then we have to get that one, it's named texture. Let's call it foam web, because it kind of does look like a web. Has to be set to object. Again, getting that empty. and setting it to 0.5 so it's consistent. I left the normals on there, so that should be fine. And in this case, we're going to invert it so that the lines are black and they can be multiplied over. So that has to be turned down, and the first one has to be black. Boom. You can make this fully visible if that'll make you feel better, then you can just multiply it. Now, if I render with the water rays, this is what you would see. Beautiful. Of course, this thing needs to be white, not blue. And we need to make sure that this one is fully visible. Now we need to go back to the other one and make sure the black is transparent. Okay, no, the white has to be transparent because we want the brighter parts to show. Otherwise, I'm going to have to invert the map at the end, this ray thing. Okay, so the rays will be on the second layer. So let's call this water rays. You don't want the two to mix, because if they mix, then this is all you get. You don't see through the water. It's really annoying. So get the water rays and move them to the second layer, masking the first. And the scene is that you don't mask this thing. Don't even go there. Okay, so turn both on and we are set. So now if you render it out, you should see through the surface of the water again. Coolness. Now, node editor. Select your water rays and put them into the viewer, and get a color ramp so that we can sharpen it up. I've noticed in the little research I could do on this subject that when it's used in anime, it's not always used, but when it is used in anime, it is very selective. I think it takes a lot of time and effort to animate it because it's such a almost abstract kind of thing. So I don't think they really go all out on this, at least not as far as I've seen. So I do speak under correction. So getting some water rays here. Of course, the rays have to come from outside the water, so we have to make them shine down, and they're coming slightly from the side as well. That looks beautiful. Just want them to be a little bit more prominent, something like that. Okay, now we can add that mist pass effect that I was talking about earlier. We just need to turn it on for the scene. Okay, so get a mix node and set to mist, and make sure that you can actually see what you're doing. You have to use a converter so we can see what has to be where. Okay, I think we can do it like that. Okay, moving this one there, we can now make this one a really nice blue. I think we can make it even a little bit more opaque. Something like that. That's beautiful. I like that. Now we have to do something similar for the light rays. Now remember, the light rays do overpower this mist thing for a certain distance. So just apply that as well to the mentality. That has to be mist. This one has to be in there. And we have to mix it before going to sunbeams. And it'll have to be this one. And this has to be black, otherwise there is going to be like this flat white glare coming. I do see we need to fix this texture, but we'll do that in a second. The foam is partially transparent, it's not supposed to be. Okay, can let that be sharpened up. Something like that. Okay, that's beautiful. Now let's quickly fix that texture I was talking about on the surface. It has to also define alpha. That's why it's not as clear as it should be. And there we go. Nice and strong. Now, we can add this. Add our light rays over it. so that we see something like that. And what is there? There was something else I wanted to add. Let's just add a little bit of a color to the underwater area. It's one of the missing ingredients that I struggled a lot to find. When God suggested this one, I was like, wow, that's so cool. So you just take a little bit of a color, just like that. You can do it as intense as this if you want to. I think it's a little bit too much. I know anime is typically overdone, but you don't have to overdo it this badly. So you can just reduce it a little bit so you can still see some color, and of course do the same thing for the rays, so they're also slightly colored, something like that. If you want to, you can also use alternative colors here. For example, you can use a yellow or an orange here to complement the blue-green. So you can go for something like yellow. I think will do better in this kind of scene. Something like that, if you want to. It's really not required. I prefer to go for the exact same color because it just increases that sense of space, you know, that sense of this is underwater and this is the color that's coming through. Okay, that is good. Now we need to darken this area a little bit. I feel that it's a little too bright in terms of the blue. And it needs to be a little stronger as well. Not that strong, just a little stronger. Yeah. We're just going to go for a fairly good contrast. Now, if this is what you're happy with, then you can leave it here, but I'm going to add a few more things to the scene. And I'm also going to shrink down the rays texture a little bit so that it gives us a few more rays. And I'm going to reduce the intensity of the ripple effect, so we can actually see clearer from underneath the water what we're looking at. So adding those, you can just use a separate and combine RGBA set. The red looks kind of cool. And you can combine these just like that. Now we need to separate them out. So under distort, you can use translate. Do this twice. Using relative makes it a lot easier. Move the 1, 2 in one direction and move the other 1, 2 in the negative direction. Just like that. And you can immediately see there's a slight red fringe on the right side and a slight blue fringe on the left side. Now, unfortunately, this is still too sharp. So what I usually do is I just blur it along the x-axis. About 0.25 or so will do. I do that for both, and the green stays right where it's at so that there is a strong element of sharpness to the view still. Okay, that is beautiful. Now, there's another thing I want to add, and that is the quick blur. The quick blur allows us to just get that nice soft look going as well. Yeah, I think we just leave it as is. Okay. Now for the slight adjustments to the back. So water surface. I feel that it's way too strong. Let me just get this one right here. I'm going to make this 0.5 and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. The details have to be stronger. Weaker. There has to be more details, but the effect has to be a little bit weaker. 1.05, and let's see what that looks like. You can see it a little clearer. I think that it's still a little too intense though. So let's go for 0.1. I kind of like that. That just gives a slight wobble to it, but you can clearly see what's outside of the water. Now we have to do that for the rays. Also has to be on 1. And also has to be on 0.1. I think I put it on 0.1. Let's see. Yeah. Now we can render that again and see what we have in the final. Boom. That is gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. I think we can reduce the blue a little bit. So we have some idea of color. Yeah, there we go. 0.582. That's beautiful. And all you have to do is render it out. It's as simple as that. I hope this proves useful to you guys. Have a great one and God bless you.